Edu-Magicians, welcome to the Edu-Magic Podcast with your host, Dr. Sam Fessich. Dr. Sam is a professor of education, author of Edu-Magic, and a pumpkin spice latte fan. This podcast is designed for pre-service teachers. Remember, friends, teaching doesn't begin at graduation, but during that first class at 8 a.m. Let's get this party started.
Hi, I'm Batsheva Frankel from Overthrowing Education, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Edu Magic Podcast. My name is Dr. Sam Fessich, and I am so excited today to have with me Dr. Joy. You may have seen her work on Twitter, or maybe you've checked out her work with EduMatch, but she is an amazing educational leader who's going to share the power of owning your joy and the work that you do day in and day out as a teacher. Dr. Joy, welcome to the show today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be here and just love the work that you're doing for pre-service teachers because I didn't have some of these experiences as a pre-service teacher, so I think this is really awesome.
Oh, well, thank you so much. That means a lot. So, Dr. Joy, before we get into the work of bringing joy to education, to the classroom, can you tell us about your teaching story, where your journey has led you, and where you are today in education?
Sure. So I want to say I really got that spark about being a teacher. I always loved to learn as a student. I loved school. I loved every part of school. And so learning was just something I loved to do. But I think the spark for teaching came for me when I was in high school and I had this job as a playground instructor. And so some friends and I, we worked at these different playgrounds around the city in our neighborhoods. And during the summer, we had groups of kids, and we spent the day with them. It was like a camp, and we taught them dances, and we had a big, fair at the end, and we did lessons with them, and it was just really neat. I love that connection. And that was in high school, so 17, 18, and I still talk to some of those kids to this day. And so that connection, and they're adults now, actually. And so I love that connection, and ended up actually going to school for teaching. And I remember going to through the classes and feeling like, now I don't know, I'm not really, is this what the learning you get is so different from what you actually like have to experience. And so I loved college and the experience, but I wasn't sure that that passion for teaching was evident during that time. But when I started doing my student teaching was when like reality hit, is when I really saw myself as a teacher because I was there doing it. I got to see all of the different layers of education. And so that is when it became reality for me. And I actually had a really amazing experience as a student teacher because the college I went to, Norfolk State, they had this program where you can complete your student teaching overseas in a DoD school. So I had a chance to do my student teaching in Germany at one of the bases and travel and so I had just such an amazing experience. So that's kind of where I was through my teaching, just leading up to that. And then I became an elementary teacher. I served as a professional learning specialist and also a school administrator. And currently I work in higher education. So that's kind of like 20 years plus that I've just kind of gave you an overview of.
I love that story. I love how it started off, with your student teaching experience being impactful, working at a DoD school, being an educator, moving into administration, moving into higher education. That is quite the journey and lots of different stops along the way throughout your educational journey. I think it shows the power of being a lifelong learner and a lifelong leader.
Absolutely.
Now, Dr. Joy, I know there's a story behind your name, so I'd love for you to first share the story behind Dr. Joy and the story behind why did you choose the word joy?
Well, it's so funny because I want to say when I left the classroom and I transitioned into a role as professional learning specialist, I remember thinking like schools need joy. I had a chance to see schools from like the outside view. I was no longer inside of my classroom. So I was able to visit so many schools and just see like the outside, like just have that overview, that high level overview of what was going
Mm-hmm.
on in schools. And I would remember thinking, man, schools need joy. And when I was a little girl, my dad used to call me Joy, and I did not like it. You know, I was just like, I don't want to be
Really?
called that. And oh, I didn't like it at all. You know, just like a young girl, I just, you know, kids are funny about that kind of stuff. I call my daughter
They
Jelly
are.
Bean, and she doesn't like it now. You know, she just doesn't like it. And so, I remember sitting here talking to my husband. I said, you know what? I think I'm gonna like promote this joy thing and talk about joy and how important it is and get people to be joyful, you know, and I'm going to call myself Dr. Joy. It was just like this idea that came. And I had realized, though, even though it was just an idea we were talking about and it connected to that name that my parents gave me, I also realized that throughout my entire life, both personally and professionally, I've been empowered with joy. I've been empowered by joy. I think no matter what challenges come by my way, and there have been many, 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 many. Um, I always have that hope that somewhere in it that there's joy.
I think that's a beautiful I think that's a beautiful story. I love how you embrace the nickname that your dad gave you at a young age, and you've just incorporated this joyfulness throughout your career. And I think it's so inspiring to hear
Mhm.
that. And I know as future teachers, you were talking about in your college career, like we've all been to those classes that are like, I'm not finding joy
Mhm.
in this class, gotta be honest. So
Yes.
what why
Yes.
did
Exactly.
yeah, we've all been there. So why is it important for our future teachers who are listening today to remain focused on the joy and the work that they're doing to prepare to be an educator of excellence?
Well, because you have a lot of challenges that you're going to face. And when I was in school, I really didn't understand like the depth of some of the challenges that I was going to face as an educator.
Mm,
And just the idea of balancing my personal and professional life
mm,
and, you know, just the whole dynamic of teaching and building relationships and trying to get everything done within the course of a day, I did not realize how many challenges that I was actually going to face as a teacher. You don't talk about that a lot in schools, and but then we do talk about it, but then we don't talk about how we can confront these challenges in a healthy way. And so I realized that, you know, as and throughout my career as an educator, I kind of went through this lens that all these challenges from the outside, if they would just fix themselves, I would feel better. I would feel better
mhm,
about my role. I would feel better about my life. But then I realized that it was me that I had to fix. It was my personal joy that I was responsible for my joy, and that didn't matter how many accomplishments that I had, how many accolades, how many potlucks, how many free jeans days, how many coupon, whatever the outside, how much support you were getting, lack of support. If I didn't take responsibility for my joy, it wasn't going to make a difference, and then I really couldn't give kids joy or bring joy to others if I couldn't even capture it myself.
mhm. Dr. Joy, how can we work to capture that joy, to find that within ourselves when we're having those bad days? Because it's not always going to be sunshine and roses every day, even as a college student, as a student teacher, as a first year teacher. How can
Mhm.
we work to really find that joy within us and just celebrate it?
Well, there's a couple of things that's important. There's a something I read about not too long ago called the broaden and build theory, and it's this idea that we practice these different we you use these different tools and we practice these different routines um, intentionally, and it's not always going to be comfortable at first. So that when challenges arise, it's like we've built our resilience to respond in a positive manner.
Hmm.
It's not saying that sometimes being positive feels awkward, especially when you don't feel like you want to be positive.
Right.
But when you intentionally put things into practice and you work at it and you work at it, when those big challenges really occur, you find out that you look at things from a whole different perspective. because eventually you start practicing those things naturally. So it's definitely working on those areas that you feel, those virtues that you feel like you want to have that will add to your joy. It's about really working on those intentionally, all just working on them. And you have to read just like you study, for your academic courses. You have to study for and read and put things and look for tools and find new tools that'll help
Mhm.
support your joy. That's one
Mhm.
thing. The next thing I want to say is that self-care, we hear about self-care all the time.
Yes.
As educators, self-care is something that I struggled with so much because oftentimes we try to go with the flow of our organizations, and some of their practices or may not be in harmony with our self-care needs. So you can't forget about yourself. It
Mhm.
can be a simple thing as having lunch for 30 minutes by yourself in your classroom. You may need that to get through the day, but maybe
Right.
everybody else is working through their lunch. But you may really need that. Sometimes you can't just go with the flow. You have to create self-care that is in harmony with your needs, not with the needs of everyone else. So those are the two things I'll say that are important.
When we talk about self care, I think that's an important routine to get into as future teachers because I I really think that as future teachers, it's so easy to say yes to everything, volunteer for all the things, and kind of put yourself on the back burner. It's so
Yeah.
important to put yourself first and take care of you. I mean, we've all heard that phrase, "You can't pour from an empty cup," and it's
Yeah.
so true. So start getting into that as a future educator. I think it'll help propel you into your first year teaching.
And there'll be a lot of distractions. There will be a lot of distractions everywhere, and you have to kind of find a way to read through some of the things that are distractions
Mm.
and that are not supporting you as an individual, both professionally and personally.
Oh, I love that you added that. Thank you. Thank you. Because some things that look like shiny, oh, I want to go check that out, could really be
Yes.
a distraction. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Now, Dr. Joy, I'd love for you to take some time to share about the work that you're doing. You have a podcast, you have other work out there. Can you share about your work and where we can find it?
Absolutely. So right now I am really trying to build a joyful community. I really am wanting to just have sort of like a league of educators who want to support this joy work. And so my website, joyworkedu.com, you can go up there and find different ways to engage with the community. I also have a Facebook page at joyworkedu and on Twitter at joyworkedu. So everything is joyworkedu.
I'm sensing some
Um,
consistency there.
yes. I'm trying.
I love
And
it.
that's an important thing, consistency. Consistency.
Yes.
That'll be your biggest I don't want to digress, but that'll be your biggest um that's the thing you have to remember in your work as a teacher, consistency. I'll just say that for now. But
Yes.
so joyworkedu.com, and there's different ways I'm trying to get the voice of other teachers. So, for example, being a guest on my podcast. Also, I'm looking for guest bloggers. Um, I also do like a book chat, Joy Book Club, and we've done several books over the last 2 years, which is just like a conversation about a book that can help, just engage others in certain issues that are going on in education. And we always create the connection to joy. Um, and so there's just different ways to interact, and I love to continue to build this community and hear how other teachers are just exemplifying joy in their roles, experiencing it, trying to sustain it, just real stories. That's what I'm looking for. I wrote a book recently called Back to Zero, which is a children's book, and that talks about kind of like how we get through challenges. Um, and so that's another thing that we have to remember, that joy is not the absence of challenges. So a lot of my work, which is why it's called joy work, you'll hear me talk about just the many challenges that we face and how to navigate those challenges. So I'm doing that, and I'm currently working on Joy Works, which is a book with another book with Edu, where I just capture stories from different educators and just talk about lessons I've learned in regard to the importance of joy.
And when's that book coming out?
So that book it's like done and in editing stages, so it's coming
Yay!
out this year.
That's wonderful. Congratulations.
Yes.
And friends, I'll put links to all of Dr. Joy's, her children's book, her website, her Facebook group, her Twitter out on the show notes so you can connect with her. Now, Dr. Joy, I want to chat about something that you mentioned. You said just because we have joy in our work doesn't mean that there's not challenges. And I think that can lead into my next question is, what's one piece of advice that you have for future teachers as they start to look for their joy, or just in general, what's one piece of advice that you have for our future teachers listening today?
Well, and I got on this, I said this before earlier, but I just want to emphasize create and maintain self care routines that are in harmony with your life. That is the most important thing. You have to learn yourself as an educator. You'll hear a lot of times, you may hear like, this is the way we do it, this is the way it's done. You can't be afraid to kind of build yourself as an educator. You want to have a long, beautiful career with many opportunities, and you'll have different experiences. So you have to create your path. There's no one way to do this. We're always learning as educators. So keep learning, keep just finding ways to grow and just be you. You have to bring yourself to the classroom. There's so many things that you'll hear, but you have to bring yourself into that classroom. That's the only way that you can love what you do. And children need teachers that love what they do.
I'm going to say I love that because I think that's so powerful. You need to be authentic. You need to have a self-care routine that speaks to your teacher's soul. You need to be creative and find joy in those moments. Dr. Joy, I'm going to thank you for your time today. Can you quickly shout out where we can connect with you over on Twitter?
Sure, at JoyWork EDU. That's where you can connect with me. I'm on there pretty often.
Awesome. That's amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Joy.
Yes, thank you. It was a pleasure to be here.
All right, friends. Thank you so much for your time today. And remember, you have the joy and the edgy magic within you.
And there you have it, Edu-Magicians. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with your friends. For more Edu-Magic, check out sfessage.com and follow Dr. Sam on Twitter and Instagram at sfessage. Until next time, you have the Edu-Magic within you.